Good morning. Thank you for being here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the people of Santa Barbara and the region here on the Central Coast. And you know, this state is beautiful, and no place better exemplifies that than, frankly, Santa Barbara. Beautiful city, beautiful coast, beautiful people. Heck, we even have a beautiful governor. But we can all acknowledge that things aren't necessarily so beautiful in California right now. We've got kids that are still looking at school screens. My own daughter is finishing her classes actually today, watching a screen from home. We've got businesses that have been shut down, literally crushed. Home Depot and Costco have done great, but small businesses that frankly make Santa Barbara so vibrant have been so severely damaged in this shutdown. We're at a point now where we have a drought throughout the entire state, a government-made, man-made drought. We've got electricity blackouts that happened last year, and we're looking at them again coming up. We're going to have fires probably, unfortunately, in the state. Crime is soaring. Our taxes are unbelievably high, the highest in the country. And of course, our poverty rate is one of the highest in the country. And homeless all over the streets, unfortunately. It's afflicted this wonderful community, but certainly our major cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and my own home of San Diego have experienced tremendous problems with homelessness that just aren't being solved. So what really is the problem in California? And it's one word: politics. In 2018, we chose beauty over brains. We chose a connected, elitist politician over someone with accomplishments. And then that politician goes and violates his own rules. We all know about the French Laundry, where he went out and violated his own rules and had dinner with lobbyists, the people that really run this state. And of course, this morning, we're treated to another piece of that puzzle. A news story that exhibits the kind of corruption that, unfortunately, too many people in this community have become too used to. And that is the governor and his wife taking huge sums of money from donors, from people who have business in California and need government bent to their needs. And they've funded the governor's wife's foundation to the tune of millions of dollars. These groups aren't funding that foundation because they think the foundation does such wonderful work. They're financing that foundation for one reason only, and that is to influence politics, to influence the government, to get a benefit. And if anybody really wants to understand why it is that California has all these issues: housing costs going out of sight, taxes, lack of water, lack of electricity, fires that have gone out of control, homelessness, poor, non-performing schools. It's because of those interest groups that contribute to politicians and bend policy to their needs. That has got to end in California. And you know, the French Laundry incident was just one example, but it's gone nationwide. I was in Washington, D.C. a few months ago, and I struck up a conversation with a cab driver who himself had moved out of California because it was too expensive, and he told me he couldn't believe that governor violating his own rules. Well, you know what? This state needs to get functional again. This state needs to be fixed. We need to get this state so that it's affordable and livable for average, hardworking Californians. And that starts with the recall of Gavin Newsom. Let me tell you, Gavin Newsom has so angered and divided the people of this state that over 2 million, and they include independents and Democrats as well as Republicans, over 2 million literally put their name on the line to recall this governor because they said, we can't take it anymore. We've got to fix this state. We can't keep living with the high cost of living, the lack of water, the lack of electricity, the poor schools, all the issues that are going on in this state. So we see that we need to make those changes. But you know, I don't come from a crony family. I'm not connected. My aunt isn't Nancy Pelosi. I didn't grow up at the foot of the Getty family with their billions. As a matter of fact, my background's a little bit ugly. My background involves my real father left when I was a baby. My mom raised me, a single mom, a school teacher. I had to work. I had to study. I finished college in 2.5 years. I started my own business as a CPA when I was 20, and I've had to work and work hard and study hard and deliver results over 40 years, and that's what I've done. And it's that experience that leads me to believe that I can really have an effect on fixing this state and making life better for the people of California. You know, politicians run from change. This recall gives us an opportunity to run towards change, to fix the problems of this state, and they're eminently fixable. But if you look at every single problem in this state, it's caused by politicians who don't know how to fix them. They listen to the special interests and the donors, and they don't solve the problems. Water, electricity, fires, housing, homelessness, the tax burden, the cost of living. These are all problems that can be solved if we just look to solutions and get away from the excessive partisanship and the political gamesmanship. We can build affordable housing. We just need to reduce regulations and reduce lawsuits. We can have water and electricity if we just diversify those sources. We can do something about the fires that have afflicted this area and the mudslides that follow by making sure that we manage the forests and we provide air cover and effective air support for our firefighters. We can get better performing schools if we give parents alternatives, if we inject competition into the school systems, if we give the money that we're spending on the schools to the parents and let them choose a good school for their kids, frankly, just like Gavin Newsom chose good schools for his kids in Sacramento. These problems can be solved, but the voters of this state have to demand it. And that's what this recall is all about. This recall gives us the opportunity to stand up and be counted against the corruption in Sacramento, against the influence of these donors and these interest groups. That's what I'm talking about in this race. That's why I'm running for governor, because I can't be bought. I'm doing this because the voters of this state need solutions to these problems, and they're not getting them from Gavin Newsom. He is not going to solve these problems. And why? Because he needs all of these interest groups if he wants to run for president in the future. That's why he's not fixing homelessness. That's why he's not fixing the housing crisis and doing the things needed for that. That's why he's not fixing water and electricity and all the problems with our cost of living, because he needs those groups to finance and support him in his bid for higher office. Well, I don't care about that. I care about fixing this state. I care about bringing true change to this state. And you know what? We've tried celebrities. We've tried career politicians. They haven't gotten the job done because their priorities aren't our priorities. Well, guess what? We need a business guy who has spent a career solving problems. That's what I've done in the private sector. I've worked with teams to come up with solutions that actually solve the problems. Because if I didn't, I'd be out of business. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. We need to get these problems solved. This contest, as you've seen in our advertising, is the beauty against the beast. I'm going to be a beast when it comes to solving these problems and standing up to the special interests. We've seen what the beauty has done with California, and it's not pretty. We need to now unleash the beast, and that's why I'm running for governor, and that's why the people are going to vote to recall Gavin Newsom and replace him with somebody who's actually going to get the job done. Thank you for being here, and I'll be happy to take questions.
How do you plan to solve those issues?
Well, I've talked about water. That's a big issue for the farming community around this region. It's one of the best farming communities in the world, frankly, in terms of salad fixings and all the other things that come out of this region, grapes, etc. We need water. Well, you know what? We're sitting next to the largest body of water in the world. We need to do desalination. The Israelis have done that at much lower cost with reverse osmosis, with advanced technologies. We can do that. We can also recycle water. We've got plenty of water if we just recycle what we're using. And of course, we need to store it more. We had tremendous snows in 2017, and most of that water flew into the Pacific Ocean. We can save the fish. There's no reason we can't save fish and provide adequate drinking water as well as agricultural resources for our farmers. So that's an example. Electricity. We've decommissioned natural gas, which is clean burning. Now, we need to make sure that we don't have methane leaks. I understand that, and that technology exists. But I'll tell you what, we would help the global pollution problem if we could get our natural gas, explore for it, freeze it, liquefy it, put it on tankers, ship it to China and India. Right now, China's emissions are equal to the rest of the world combined. And why? Because they're building coal plants left and right. We've got to make natural gas economically competitive with coal for China and India. If we do that, we'll clean the world's environment, we'll make the world a much better place, and we'll also develop incredible resources for California. Those are just some of the things. I mean, there's many more. I talked about housing. Homelessness, which is a particular problem in this area. I mean, we've got to treat addictions and mental illness. You are not going to solve the problem of homelessness by just moving people into hotels. You've got to treat the problem and the illnesses. The politicians just lack the courage to stand up and say that, and that's why that problem's not solved.
You said partisan politics is the main driver for a lot of the problems the state is having. How would you respond to the argument that the recall effort is a Republican power grab, is just partisan politics in the opposite direction?
How about something new? The truth. The truth. The truth is that Republicans, independents, and Democrats have signed this petition. The truth is it's been paid for by Republicans, independents, and Democrats. Look up Chamath Palihapitiya, who is a well-known Silicon Valley billionaire and gave $100,000 to the recall. He has funded all kinds of Democratic causes in the past, so he's far from a conservative Republican. People all across the political spectrum are saying this state is not functioning well. It is a laughingstock, but this state should be the leader in this country. This state is the golden state. It's always been the state of dreams for people from all over the world, and it should be again. But last year, for the first time in our history, we actually lost population. Isn't that ought to be a significant wake-up call to the politicians, but it certainly isn't. It's a wake-up call for the voters to finally make some changes, and that's what this recall is all about.
Do you think during this pandemic it's a little awkward to have a recall?
No, I actually don't. I think the pandemic is a shining example of why we need the recall. I think voters ought to look at Florida versus California. Take a look at those two states' experience. Florida, far older population, but their death rate was roughly similar to California, yet they've been open almost all this time. Their kids have been going to school with a teacher in the classroom, so they haven't experienced the tremendous damage and that this shutdown has done to our kids and our small businesses as well as our churches. So, I think people should understand by comparing Florida and California that there is a difference in leadership. There is a difference in having competent people at the helm, and I hope that message gets through, and I think this recall is absolutely needed. It's the only thing that's going to be on the ballot in 2021, and I think that gives us a unique opportunity to just focus on the problems of California and the solutions and the change in management and leadership that we need.
The pandemic restrictions caused a lot of frustration. Are you worried now that these restrictions are being lifted, the cases are going down, and the economy is starting to recover, that public perception will start to lose some of that push for change in the general?
Well, you know, thank God that the restrictions are lapsing, and thank God we have the vaccines and people are getting it, and that's good. But these problems I've talked about, homelessness, housing, the cost of living, the tax burden, water, electricity, poor performing schools, these problems predated the pandemic, and frankly, they were the genesis for the recall to begin with, because Gavin Newsom took office, remember, in 2019, a full year before the recall, and he did almost absolutely nothing except, frankly, make each one of those problems worse. I mean, if people kind of go back in time and look, housing costs kept going up, homelessness got worse, water and electricity, you know, the availability got worse there, the schools, he killed charter schools, and so the alternatives for parents were reduced. So this recall started way before the pandemic. I think the pandemic certainly gave it a dose of firepower, because people saw the mismanagement of that pandemic was just epic. And I think people then said, okay, you're right. We made a mistake in 2018. We've got to correct that mistake, and the sooner we do it, the better off we are. You know, people will say, well, gee, why do the recall? Because it's a year later, we're going to run for re-election. It's because every single day matters. When you are struggling to pay your bills, to pay your rent, to put your kids through college, and you see electricity being shut off, when you see the fact that you're a farmer and you don't have water, or you're looking at water rationing, you want that change to start now. You don't want to wait another year. You want those problems to be corrected now. And that's why I think the recall makes sense. I think that's why we need to start this process sooner rather than later. And, you know, in the business world, you don't have the luxury of saying, I'll make those changes in a year from now. You've got to make changes now or you're out of business.
All right, we got the bus. One last call? Oh,
good.
Thank you.
For coming out, guys. Thanks, really guys. Appreciate it.
Got to get the message out.
Yep. Thank you for coming out. Really appreciate it.
Gotta get that B-roll.
Got it. Nice words on the bus.
And you guys are all good here?
All good here?